main event saw Max Holloway win via unanimous decision over Yair Rodriguez. Odds makers, not even the odds makers, the betting public must have been shitting their pants during this fight because they are the reason they gave no faith. They had no confidence in Yair Rodriguez. They thought this guy was just going to, the moment he got hit with a few 1-2s, he was just going to turn over and turtle up. And little did they know that this man, what do they say? Viva Mexico, right? Isn't that what they say? This man had the heart of a Mexican fighter for sure. And he fought like the best fight I think I've ever seen from Yair Rodriguez.
Yes.
Even in a losing effort. This fight overall is in the fight of the year discussion. And I just want to say, before we even talk about the fight itself, really, what a run the UFC had this month.
Oh,
I believe if you go back, even before UFC 267, I believe was the Paulo Costa Marvin Vettori card. So just look at the 4 biggest fights from those cards. You go Costa versus Vettori, and then UFC 267 had Jan versus Sandhagen. 268 had Chandler versus Gaethje, and then we get Holloway versus Rodriguez, which made.
And don't forget Billy Q and Shane.
Well, yeah, but I'm just,
I know.
Like just saying overall that like what a month, and yes, other fights obviously throughout there that were fantastic as well. But just those might be people's fight of the year picks right there. Like take your pick.
Yeah,
and so I just wanted to say what a month it's been. It's probably been the best, my favorite month to have covered so far since we've been doing this podcast, just because the quality of the product we've been getting from the UFC has just been so high for the last month. And maybe the best month overall that I've seen quality-wise from the UFC since I started watching. If you go top to bottom for the last month, I mean, that's month of they really came to play.
Oh yeah.
But with that being said, this fight. Okay. Take a second. This fight was fantastic, but nobody came here expecting us to say anything different in that regard. So Dominic, you being the Max Holloway fan, you wore the hoodie on Friday because you're a shill, and seeing the performance you saw, seeing the fight that you saw as a Max Holloway fan, I'm curious, not just your thoughts on the fight, but did the performances of both Holloway and Rodriguez live up to expectations? Was there anything that was a bit disappointing? Anything that exceeded expectations in terms of a performance basis?
Max did everything I expected him to do. I predicted a late round finish, which he was close a couple times, but overall, like the way he performed was everything I thought, except for his grappling. No, we got to see Max Holloway grapple for 2 rounds, and for what we got to see, it was pretty good. Granted, Yair is a striker, so he's not known for wrestling, but it's just a part of Max's game that you don't get to see very much. So I was glad we kind of got to see that, and some, jiu-jitsu transitions and being able to hold top position, land ground and pound, look for submissions, was looking for an arm triangle. And in terms of like over exceeding my expectations, Yair Rodriguez, man, the fact that he came in here after over 2 years off, gets launched in with Max Holloway, who's looking like an absolute killer following his win against Cater, and puts on a performance like this. I scored it 3-2 for Max. I had rounds 1 and 2 both go to Yair. His calf kicks were disgusting. I don't even know how Max could walk out of the octagon last night. His striking was so crisp, so powerful. Max's chin, again, is just insane. But so is Yair Rodriguez's chin. I mean, this was a performance, like Noah said, the best we've seen of Yair in a losing effort at that. And what I saw looked like a guy that's still going to contend for a title one day because he looked so good. It didn't look like he missed a step. It looked like he got better. Maybe this 2-year layoff was in his benefit at the end of the day because he just looked lights out, man. But at the end of the day, it still wasn't enough to beat Max Holloway. Max is just such an elite talent. 19 wins now in the UFC at only 29 years old is just so insane. The Hall of Fame resume he already has stacked up is just crazy. And now it's like, okay, What are we going to do with him? I don't know. I guess I could ask you your thoughts more on the fight first before we get into what's next. I didn't want to steal any thunder.
Like you did with the Alaska Fighting Championship, you rat
Yes.
bastard.
Yes.
No, basically a lot of my thoughts are going to emulate yours there. Totally, Yair Rodriguez exceeding expectations. This is what we really need. He really needed this.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a loss, and he took a lot of punishment here. But to just get in there, have a full, complete performance, 5 rounds, it's a fight that's going to be up there for Fight of the Year talk. This is just what he needed. He's had a rough couple years, even if it looks like he's improved a lot.
Yeah.
And, you mentioned maybe it was good for him. And it could have been because, he had that war with Korean Zombie, maybe just taking a lot more time to recover. And then even the Jeremy Stevens fight, Jeremy gave him a good run for his money at times too. But I don't know if I would go that far to say that maybe it was good for him to have that layoff. But I do think it showed that he was still very committed to his training and committed to being a fighter.
Yeah.
Even while he was inactive. It's just been a rough time for him. Really, it's been a rough few years, not just the USADA violation where he didn't update his app. I think it's 3 times, and he got suspended for 6 months. All the failed bookings with Zabit Magomedsharipov. It's just he's had a really hard time to just get a fight booked, get your training camp together, show up to fight night, fight.
Yeah.
That's as simple as that sounds. He's just not been able to do that, whether it's been his fault or his opponent's fault. So for him to actually come in and do that here with Max Holloway was just a breath of fresh air. It really proved that he is a legit contender in this division. And yeah, I definitely agree with that sentiment of he could very well be a champion in the future. Now, if I have to pick any holes here, I'm going to actually pick a hole for Max Holloway. Now, I do agree, exceeded expectations. Did not expect a lick of grappling.
Yeah,
but Max landed some pretty good takedowns. He basically kind of baited Yair into throwing those leg kicks and then started timing him up very well with some nice double legs. But he kind of got lucky that he was getting those, if I'm going to be honest. I shouldn't say lucky. I mean, it took skill to get these takedowns. But if that fight would have just stayed standing the entire 5 rounds, I think Yair could have really pulled that one out because those leg kicks he were throwing were hurting Max bad. But once the grappling got brought into the equation, Yair started to fall behind a little bit, kind of had to start going more for broke, going more for the head a little bit, rather than continuing to beat up the leg. So that kind of got taken out of the later rounds, which is a credit to Max and his game plan. But where I'm going to say that this is a potential red flag for Max is, again, this has been it's always, you don't see it a lot. Like you look at a Calvin Kattar fight and a flawless performance he had there. But Max Holloway has always struggled with being a defensive fighter. He's a bit of a I'll take one to land one better type guy. And to his credit, it's nearly never failed him. But the bigger problem is those leg kicks. This is the reason basically the way he lost his title was the leg kicks of Alexander
100%.
Volkanovski. And this is why it's a red flag for me that we're still seeing it here, is if he wants to beat Alexander Volkanovski in a third fight, that's just he's not going to be able to take that for 5 rounds. And I don't see him necessarily being able to take down Volkanovski. So if you get 5 rounds where if Alexander really focuses on that, I mean, Max might be struggling to even walk on one of those legs towards the later rounds. It could really hinder his entire offense. Now, surprisingly, if I remember correctly, the second fight between the two, I don't remember Volkanovski really focusing on the leg kicks like he did in the first fight.
Nope.
Which is kind of interesting now that we've seen the fight where he won the belt, and then you look at this fight with Yair. So now this is going to kind of transition into what's next, and the obvious choice is to say you run it back a third time with Alexander Volkanovski, and all in all, that's probably what I would say I want to see most. But I think there's a bigger question here of if that's really what we're going to get next. These two likely could fight May. I was thinking like May, June.
Yeah.
It's both of them coming off of wars. I want to give them some time, especially for a guy like Volkanovski, who is a long-standing champion at this point. And then for Max, who has put in more work than he even needed to show he was worthy of a title shot. So give him some time to recover before going back in there. I'm thinking like May or June. But around that time frame, Dominic, is when you'll start seeing guys like Conor McGregor returning. And there was a lot of, what do you call them? A lot of feelers thrown out there from both sides. And it appears that this is becoming a real possibility potentially that maybe Conor McGregor's return bout would be at lightweight against Max Holloway. So I want you to give me what you think should happen next, but also what do you think will happen next based off what we saw this weekend?
I mean, what I think should happen is the title fight, right? That third fight with Volkanovski. It's like it's the highest, the two top guys, and then there's just a step below. It's Volkanovski and Max Holloway. So I definitely want to see that again. The problem arises, as you kind of mentioned on Friday, like if Max wins, then do we have to do it a fourth time? And then if he wins again, it's 2-2. Do we do it a fifth time? It's a whole saga at that point, a movie series. So, but yes, that's what I think should happen. And I said in our group chat last night, so I'm obviously not going to pivot from that. I think Conor and Max do fight. But I said it's a matter of when, not if. Because I don't necessarily think it is next for Max. I mean, by all means, it could be. It could be next for Max. I'm not saying it can't. But I don't know in my heart and my head if I think that's what will happen. I do think Max is going to get this title fight. Dana seems pretty big on making this third fight and just kind of putting it out there, getting it out of the way. But I do think we see Holloway and McGregor. I think there's a lot of intrigue there. I've said it before where they first fought way back when they were both young pups in the UFC, and they both went on to accomplish so many amazing things. So to see it ran back years later, kind of like how Conor and Dustin Poirier did, would be very cool. But I think there's bigger fish to fry for Conor as well, personally, if he comes back. I still want to see the trilogy with Nate, and there's a couple other names out there, obviously. I mean, Conor's just staying busy on Twitter while he's recovering. He's calling out fucking everybody in the whole world. Usman, Masvidal, Nate, Tony Ferguson, Holloway, Dustin Poirier. He has plenty of options, right? And so, yeah, that's overall what I think will happen. And for what it's worth, real quick, I do just want to say Yair and Brian Ortega, thank you very much. But I do want to get your thoughts as well. Well, I guess you kind of already said you think the title fight should happen, but
I do and I don't. It's just it depends on what we actually see, and this is hindsight. It's going to be a hindsight thing because while if they book the third fight, that's going to be perfectly acceptable, makes sense. I'm going to be excited for it. If you get another 5-round decision that's razor thin close, and Max Holloway does get it, then how can you deny Volkanovski a fourth fight?
I know.
But on the bright side, really the head-to-head record isn't really what's important. It's the statement. It's the matter of how you win. If Max went in there and were to knock out Volkanovski or finish Volkanovski or vice versa, that would really be the stamp on the rivalry and likely. And, of course, if Volkanovski won another close decision with Max, I think that would still
then it's just done. Yeah.
Yeah. But in terms of for Max, if he went in there and finished, however you want to word it, Volkanovski, then I think it's hard to really say that a rematch is warranted right there, despite the 2 wins previously. But I will admit that I don't know if I really see that happening from a third fight. I feel like there is a good chance that fight goes all 5 rounds again. And, not that it won't be a good fight. Both of their 2 previous bouts I enjoyed quite a bit, but maybe not going to be the fight that Volkanovski Ortega was or that Holloway Rodriguez was. And you're just going to find people being upset because of how close it is again. It's almost going to become a meme of itself at that point. It's just like these two guys are just so equal that they can't, like, it's just impossible to even continue running this. So I kind of like where Max's head is at. It's a surprising twist in this story where I figured he'd be completely focused on the title shot with Volkanovski, but instead he's kind of liking the idea of going for something that perhaps is bigger in the short term, a bigger payday, a bigger fight, but maybe less to do with his legacy. I mean, I guess in a way it is a legacy fight, but, you know, he's not super focused right now on maybe all in on the title. It's, you know, there's bigger things at play here. And I think a fight with him and Conor McGregor is fireworks. I think that's a great fight, especially considering some of the limitations we've seen from Max as a lightweight. You know, he did not quite hold up as well against Dustin Poirier. And I think that's important to note because the majority of people are going to assume that Max is going to just run through Conor McGregor. And I just don't really see that being the case at lightweight. I think it's a much closer fight than people want to give it credit for. But it's also a very tough fight for Conor to come back to.
Yes.
So you know, I think you kind of nailed it when you said it's a matter of when, not if. In all likelihood, the moment you think that it's all but done of Conor McGregor fight being booked, that's when it's like the furthest from even being completed. And then the fights that you assume are dead on arrival and have no chance of happening are the ones that end up getting put together. I didn't think there was a chance. I really thought him and Poirier, the second fight, was never going to happen.
Yeah, came out of nowhere.
They talked about doing the boxing. They talked about doing the boxing match in Ireland for charity, and Conor's just. It's hard. Like I've mentioned previously, like Michael Chandler's tried to throw his name out there and stuff for Conor. With Conor, you never know because there's so much that goes into putting a fight on for that guy. He's bigger than the sport. So when you have a guy that has that amount of people around him, that he's essentially like a corporation in of itself, there's just a lot that goes into booking a fight for him. Yeah. It's not as simple as him saying yes. At least I don't think so.
Right.
Because he appears to say yes a lot, but then these fights don't really come to fruition. So if I had to guess, I think we do see Holloway Volkanovski 3. And I think we see Conor McGregor return and fight. I'll say Nate Diaz at welterweight.
I
don't know. I really don't know, though. For all I know, though, you know, like I said, MMA moves so fast, it changes so much.
Yep.
Conor McGregor probably won't start to be real legitimate rumors or legitimate conversations about Conor's return fight for probably another 6 months.
Yeah, it's going to be a while.
Think of how much is going to change between now and then, you know?
Oh, yeah.
The whole sport's going to be different. That's the reality.
Yes.